So thank you everyone for joining us. We're here today to officially launch Alberta's Royalty Review. When Dave agreed to take this review on, I asked him to recruit a panel and design a process to engage Albertans. I'm pleased to say he has done both. Dave and I are here today to provide you with 3 key pieces of information with regard to the Royalty Review. First, we will introduce the panelists who will serve Alberta as members of the review. Second, we will outline the objectives of the review, which are also detailed in the framework document that has just been made available here. And on the Royalty Review website, letstalkroyalties.ca. And finally, we will describe what Dave and the panelists will be doing over the next few months to engage Albertans and industry and to ultimately provide the government with advice. When we selected Dave Mowat to lead this panel, I told him my expectations were that the panel, taken as a whole, should be trusted by a wide range of Albertans, from kitchen tables to boardroom tables. That the panel must include some of Alberta's best minds. That they must understand the oil and gas industry from various perspectives: families, communities, the public services it supports, and its critical importance to our economy. And finally, these people have to be tough, because this is no easy task. I believe Dave has succeeded in bringing together a panel that fits that criteria. Peter Terzakian is an economist, investment strategist, author, and public speaker. He is Chief Energy Economist and Managing Director at ARC Financial Corporation, an energy-focused private equity firm. With over 30 years in the industry and in finance industry, he is a trusted voice that brings immense technical knowledge to the industry. Leona Hansen is the Mayor of Beaver Lodge, an area of our province where oil and gas are key to the prosperity of families. She's a seasoned businesswoman with an extensive background in community economic development, especially as it relates to small business. She also understands firsthand how important our energy sector is to rural communities. Annette Trimby worked with the Government of Alberta for many years. She's a former Deputy Minister of Treasury Board and Finance, as well as Service Alberta and Advanced Education and Technology. She has a PhD in ecology and a master's degree of science in botany. Currently, she's the President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Winnipeg. Dr. Trimby knows government and is widely respected throughout government. She also knows the nitty-gritty details of how our royalty system influences Treasury Board and our provincial budget. Working together, the mandate of the panel is to review our royalty system and to identify opportunities, provide optimal returns to Albertans as owners of the resource, to encourage industry investment, to encourage diversification opportunities such as value-added processing, innovation, and other forms of investment in Alberta, and to support the responsible development of our resources. The panel will finish its work this year and present a report to government. That report will aid in the development of a new royalty framework, one that identifies where there is support from Albertans, industry, and key stakeholders to achieve goals of the review. That new framework, along with the report that informs it, will be made public. I talk to owners and workers in the oil industry and gas industry daily, and I recognize their concerns. They want certainty, particularly given how tough times are in the oil and gas sector right now. I also recognize that companies are currently developing budgets and talking to investors as they plan for this winter's important drilling season. To help provide greater certainty for investors and for companies in the short term, our government is committing that the current royalty framework will remain in place until the end of 2016. That is to say, for 16 months, companies and investors can operate with certainty knowing there will be no changes in the royalty framework. If and when changes are made, any incremental revenue will go to the Heritage Fund. I say to those investors currently looking for opportunities in Alberta, we are an energy province and we will continue to be a great place to do business. This commitment is to not change rates until the end of next year should serve as a clear signal that our government, as elected representatives of the owners of this resource, want to be a reliable partner in supporting the success of our oil and gas industry in Alberta. Dave will describe for you in more detail about the process by which he and the panel will be engaging with Albertans and industry. But before he does that, I want to take a moment to be very clear why we are embarking on this review and why we are doing it now. Albertans have concerns about the royalty framework. As owners, Albertans deserve to know they are getting full and fair value from the development of their resources. And as a lifelong Albertan, someone whose children are building their lives in this province, I want to know that too. During downtimes, an effective royalty framework must not stand in the way of industry's recovery, but rather it must consider the importance of our oil and gas resources in their entirety. During boom times, an effective royalty framework must provide Albertans with full and fair value of their resources. A key component of this review will be to make sure our royalty framework works for everyone involved, regardless of the larger economic climate. Albertans deserve to know that one of the most important pieces of policy in our province, our royalty system, is working at its best in good times, in bad times, and for generations to come. When this process is done, we will have a royalty framework that does just that, a royalty framework that Albertans can trust. Thank you, and I'll now turn the podium over to Dave.
Thanks very much, Minister. And the Minister is giving you the background of the panel members, and what I want to do is give you a little bit more information as just why they're selected and what they form as a group. And we sought a group that would complement each other. And the whole subject of royalties is, to say the least, very complicated, not only in the content of the detail, but also in the stakeholder interests and our ability to listen and have a conversation with people. And so our goal is to create a panel that can do both. So Leona, who's the mayor of Beaver Lodge, she's a mayor. She's used to finding consensus amongst stakeholders and council itself. Her entire career has been in small business financing, which makes her kind of a facilitator, an effective thinker, a listener, and a consensus builder. And she's smart, and that is, you'll see a common denominator against all of our panelists. Peter is both operational and academic. He's an energy economist, and his second nature is to assess the complete picture, which is what we have been asked to do. He's credible, he's current, he's still working in the industry, he's often on the leading edge of understanding new technology, and he's got street smarts and book smarts. And Annette is a former Deputy Minister of Finance. As you heard, she's a scientist and a professional person working in the public service. And what she brings us is that ability. She thrives on complex problems, which is something that we will definitely see. And she's an expert in public policy. And ultimately, if you're going to do a review like this, to make it do something more than just sit on a shelf, it needs to find its way into public policy. So you can see what we, and myself, I mean, everybody loves a banker. But you can see that the group is intended to really cover all of the aspects so we can come together and draw out the insights from the things that we hear. So just as precise in choosing the panel, we've carefully planned what we believe is going to be a terrific engagement with both Albertans and the people who deal with royalties on a day-to-day basis. The Minister talked about the four returns we're trying to optimizing the returns to Albertans, encouraging investment activity, encouraging innovation and investment, and supporting the responsible development of our province's resources. That is our goal, and we'll have two streams that run at the same time and will ultimately complement each other. So the first stream is with the general public, and what we've created is a conversation hub at letstalkroyalties.ca. And there we're going to ask Albertans a whole series of questions that will actually determine some of the information that we provide and also dictate what kind of topics we want to cover. Albertans have the answers to these questions, and the panel is going to answer commonly posed questions. People can post papers that they've written, and people can start public conversations on this letstalkroyalties.ca conversation hub. We're going to be publishing information every 2 or 3 days to give people the facts and the information they're interested in getting comfortable with our royalty framework. And at the end of the discussion, and that will be 60 to 90 days, I think we're going to be in a position where we will be talking to a very large group of Albertans, and I think they'll be able to express to us what they need to be confident that we have a good royalty system in Alberta. And when you think about it, that's pretty much where we should be, is the answer to that question are really the principles that should inform the people who manage our resource, the people who extract it, and the leaders in our government, what our expectations are of Albertans. And we're not just talking about a few Albertans. We want to reach out to every single Albertan we can. People who work in the industry, people who work in government, people who teach us, care for us, our first responders, students, grandparents, everyone in Alberta. We're anxious to go to a site that we think is welcoming and will bring them with us in this discussion. So that's the first stream, the public. The second stream is our expert stream. And so at the same time that we're engaging Albertans, we'll also be talking to experts who work with royalties all the time on what can make the royalty system more effective. And we define more effective as optimizing government revenues, industry returns, innovation and diversification, and the responsible development of our resource. And that word optimization is carefully chosen because to us, what it means is doing the best you can for each one of those without hurting your partners. So it's kind of like legs on a chair. You know, having one leg longer on a chair makes that chair completely unstable. And if you kind of think of government, industry, innovation, and responsible development as those 4 legs on the chair, what our goal is to do is to build a chair just as high and as tall as we can, but keeping those legs the same length so that we stay stable and we can ultimately balance that equation forever. So our timing, as the minister said, we are going to be finished our work by the end of the year. If you want to look at the kind of big segments that we'll be doing, is we'll be starting the public engagement immediately, and it will run September, October, and November. From our expert panels, what we'll be doing is spending the first period, say September, in really working hard at getting the right data. One of the biggest issues is getting a common set of information that we can then talk details around. October will be a time to convene our expert panels and hear from the experts on that common base of information. And then on to November, we'll be drawing our insights from it. So as a panel, we're honored to have been asked to do this work. And Minister, you can count on us to do our very best for you and for the people of Alberta.
Okay, so the Minister and Dave Moment will be available for questions. And just to remind you, if you do have questions for the other panelists, we'll make them available to you afterwards.
Dave, how much of the work from the 2007 review will be part of this? Will you be looking back at that information?
You know, one of the things that we've looked at is actually the history of this throughout the province. And I think there's been more than 10 royalty reviews since the 1930s in Alberta. So we're going to look at all that information, but very clearly looking forward. Technology is changing, markets are changing, and so we got to make sure that both the information we have and our methodology really incorporates what's happening now in the world and what's going to happen in the future.
Is it possible at the end of this you could come back and say, system's good?
It's a complex thing, and we go in with no preconceived notions. We have been asked to go in with an open mind, and you can see our goal is to make this as good as we possibly can for government revenues, the industry, the optimization of the responsible development and ultimately the innovation, which will be important going forward.
But how specifically is this different from the last review? I mean, taking the information you had in the last one, how do you make this different?
You know, I think the most important thing is to understand what's been looked at in the past, but importantly, what's the state of the industry right now. That was 2007. It's been a world of difference in some parts of the technology that we're using out in our fields right now. So we want to incorporate what is happening right now and get a sense of where that technology and where our resources will go in the future and make decisions based on that.
Minister, how frequently do you want the royalties to be reviewed, or is this is this part of the mandate of the panel?
I think that decision will be part of the broader consultation for sure, so I have no preconceived idea of that, but I hope that is discussed within the framework.
And you were mentioning that there wouldn't be any change until the end of 2016, but if there is, it would go into the Heritage Fund. So are you committed to maybe changing some things? I'm not exactly sure.
No, that's part of it, just that's where some of that money would go, but no, everything is as is until the end of 2016. That will allow drillers and companies to decide about their important year coming up. It gives them stability, and also we'll have a big enough time frame that they'll be able to plan for 2017 and beyond once we have the framework.
Premier Notley had said that this review would work closely with the climate change panel, but you haven't mentioned the climate change panel today, and I can't see it in these documents. How are those two panels going to work together?
Yeah, from my perspective, there are two parallel processes working together, but I am in frequent contact with Minister Phillips on what we're doing, because industry, I've met now to date over 1,000 different leaders, either in big groups or individually. And they've always encouraged us to look at the whole package and don't change one thing at the risk of another. So for my part, I'm meeting often with Minister Phillips and keeping in touch with things. I know Dave works with Andrew Leach quite a bit, and so yeah, we are in close contact, but they are two parallel processes at the same time.
And one important aspect of that is coordinating some of the data. We're going to make sure for efficiency and consistency, we're going to share some of the data that we use. And that's a very important foundation for us, for sure.
What impact does the low oil price have on you right now in an emotional level? Going to this review, a lot of pressure from the industry and people in Alberta saying, don't touch a thing, we're going into a recession. How does that play into this review?
Certainly there's, you know, we're having a difficult time in Alberta for sure right now. But I think it's very important to note what the minister said is they're creating a 16-month window around us, so the rules stay the same from now until December 31st. So what better time to do it than when you create this bubble around the review, so that people going out and doing their capital expenditure budgets for this fall, they're in boardrooms right now thinking about that, know what the rules will be right through to December 2016. So I think it's a great time to be doing this. It's one of the things we want. Any insights we have in a framework for the future is it's got to work as well at $30 a barrel as it does at $100 a barrel.
Has there been more thought about the experts you're going to consult with, and will there be experts from other oil-producing nations?
We'll have a wide variety of sources of information. So the industry has been very generous with its willingness to provide otherwise confidential information about their companies. We will have a recognized consulting firm giving us international information, the comparative data on basins. We'll have a local firm who's very knowledgeable of Alberta providing us information, and we'll be getting information from the regulator and from the Department of Energy. So we'll be putting that together, and we'll get a very complete and global look at how Alberta fits into North American and global markets.
I have a question for the minister. Sure. If the report comes back and says change nothing, let it go the way it is, would you accept that? Or is there something else you're thinking this has to be changed at some level? Would a report saying status quo is fine, would that be okay with you?
Well, I think the report is going to be, you know, a compilation of people's views, industry's views, insights, and recommendations. And, you know, I don't want to predetermine what we're going to see, but we will certainly seriously look at the report and develop things as a result of that.
In your mind, as Minister of Energy, do you think that we need to make changes?
You know, I'm keeping a totally open mind about.
Why else do this?
Pardon me?
Why else go through this process?
Well, you know, we have, in talking to a lot of people, a lot of Albertans, there's a concern about the royalty framework. Is it the best that we can be doing? Can we trust the system? So one of the things I want after, when all is said and done, is a system that everybody feels they can trust and have faith in. So that's one of the objectives.
Well, how much of that is people just don't know the system? It is a complex system.
It's extremely complex.
So maybe people at home don't understand the system fully. If there are concerns about it, like Graham said, at the end of the day, if it's found that the system is fine, maybe we need to educate more on what the system says. Would you be open to that?
And you know, part of this website's going to be a great tool, and the teacher in me loves it because it's going to be a tool to educate all of us better on what are the issues, what are the concerns, and hopefully at the end, we're all going to have a better understanding of the industry. Because I have to say, it is so complex, and I thought I knew lots till I took this position, and so it's an opportunity for us also to educate all Albertans about how it works, understand the industry, have the industry understand what concerns Albertans, and I think in the end it's going to be great. And I can't wait for you to see this website. It's awesome.
I think it was touched on the competitiveness side of this aspect, where Alberta fits in this. How important is it that Alberta's royalty framework remains, I don't want to say lower than other jurisdictions, but to draw investment here, that it remains competitive with other jurisdictions around the world? How big of a role will that play in this?
That's important. It's, you know, investment is mobile, and investment goes to places it thinks it can find good results. So our goal will be to understand the comparability of our basin versus all the other places that would compete for capital. And once you understand that, then you can position yourself exactly the way you want to be.
And then back on the climate change strategy that's being built now, you spoke about the 4 legs and the optimization. If that panel finds that carbon needs to double in price or whatever, go up, will that play a role in where you find the royalty rates? Is that how the 2 panels will work together?
So we'll be coordinating data, so we'll be working on the same basis of data. And certainly, we're going to be looking at the total cost for companies. So if there's information available there, we'll make sure we try and incorporate it. And we'll be looking at that overall picture of doing business in Alberta compared to other jurisdictions.
We do have callers on the line, if you
Will
would.
the panel be looking at whether or not there will be a permanent, regularly scheduled review from here on in?
You know, that it's a great question, and one of the things that I think we can get to is with this, and you can help us to get people to go to this, because it isn't just a survey, it's going to be a conversation for 60 days. And I think at the end of it, we can get to the spot where us as Albertans, you and me and anyone else there can start to inform us kind of what needs to be true for you to be comfortable we have a good royalty framework. I think legislators, industry, and everyone else involved gets a really good sense of exactly what that is. I think on an ongoing basis, it seems a lot easier to keep a royalty framework meeting those objectives. We'll have a real clear sense of objectives in Alberta.
We're going to go to the phone now.
That you will be answering yes or no to.
It won't be yes or no. It will be a question to you. If it was to you, what needs to be true in your mind for you to be satisfied we have a good royalty system? It's not a yes or a no. It's we want you to tell us what those things are, and we'll compile them for Albertans and draw out the principles.
We're going to go to the phone now. Operator, can you put the first caller through?
First question comes from James Wood, Calgary Herald. Line is open. Hi, thanks for taking my call. Mike, I have a question for the minister and one for Mr. Mowat. For Minister, can you talk a little bit about how low oil prices have affected how you're moving forward? Obviously, you have given this assurances about when changes would be made. Is that only in response to low oil prices? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, certainly, as we've been talking to industry, low prices are a concern not just in Alberta, but worldwide. But in talking to industry, we did listen, and in order to provide some stability while we're doing this important work, we thought it was important to set a deadline where we won't make changes and that there'll be some status quo in the meantime. And it was in response. Like I say, I've listened and met with over 1,000 energy leaders, and there is a lot of concern. It's tough times right now, and we're hoping this will give them some ability to plan and make some decisions while this important work is being done.
There's one more caller on the phone.
And for Mr. Mowat, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, there is part of the mandate in relation to value-added opportunities. Is that affected by the low commodity price? I mean, is this a better time? Does that have an influence in terms of that moving forward?
Yes, when you look at opportunities, whether it be for diversification, innovation in the industry, I think it's got to incorporate various price levels and times that it's opportune for the industry, because the economics of things are quite a bit different at different levels. So we'll be trying to incorporate that all when we look at that particular leg of this chair.
There's one more caller on the line. Operator, can you put the last caller on, please?
The next question comes from Lauren Frugal from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I'm just, in the mandate there was mention of encouraging value-added and diversification. I'm just wondering what kind of tools you might be looking at in that respect, and what sort of options might be on the table to accomplish that with the royalty system.
You know, it's one of those things that we're going to take a really good look at that. We're going to talk to investors. We're going to talk to companies, the Department of Energy, and it's a complex issue. It is not a one variable equation, so we don't have the answer to your question right now, but we will be working in detail to try and figure out what the levers in that particular leg of the chair are.
Do 2 more questions from the floor, and then we'll wrap up.
I have a question on a different topic for the minister. Yesterday, we had some American politicians touring the oil sands.
Yes.
Did you know they were coming? If you didn't know they were coming, why didn't you know they were coming? If you did know they were coming, why didn't you go on the tour? You're the energy minister.
I know.
2 days ago, I learned that they were coming for sure. I understand it was in the works for a while, but the confirmation was only 2 days ago. I wish some days I could clone myself. I get dozens of invitations, and so yesterday I had committed to go, and I was actually visiting south of Grand Prairie at the Montney. I had my coveralls on, my hard hat, and out meeting workers and looking at facilities. So I was grateful that Minister Phillips was able to do that for us, but it was a question of, it was a last-minute confirmation. But I'm glad our U.S. guests were accommodated by Minister Phillips.
With that, the Premier has the file. Premier Brad Wall met with them. Why wasn't the Premier there?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I was aware of the invitation, that the confirmation was 2 days ago. That's, to my knowledge, that's all I know from my end. And like I say, I get dozens of invitations for every day, so I had this commitment already. So I was pleased that Minister Phillips was able to. But I understand the confirmation was only made 2 days ago that the U.S. delegation was actually coming.
How do you think this reflects on Alberta? I mean, in Saskatchewan, the Premier met with them, went on the big tour with them, and the media was invited to this. It was treated as a big deal, whereas here, I mean, the Wild Rose is putting out that this was a last-minute scramble putting this all together. Do you not think this reflects poorly on Alberta in Washington?
I'm not sure what the Wild Rose is saying is accurate. You know, as with anything, if we've made some errors, we will commit to do better. But my understanding was the confirmation for the trip was only 2 days ago, and it's really hard in our schedules to turn things around. And again, I was grateful that one of the other ministers was able to go and host them, and I was able to continue with my trip, visiting. I was with Generations yesterday and visiting their whole operation.
So you're saying the Americans did not. So the Americans actually were in Canada. They were actually in Saskatchewan. And then any sort of heads up until they were actually like a few miles away?
From what I'm aware of, it was 2 days ago the trip was confirmed to Alberta, and as I say, I was unable to help, but we made sure that another minister was able to go and host them, and that's all I know from mine.
Wrapping up now, folks. The panelists will be made available to you just outside the room. And thank you very much.